Welcome to Lift Your Leg. This is Monique and Jill from the Naughty Dog in Victoria, BC, author of As a Dog Thinketh.
And Jill Brown from Calgary, Alberta, the Bag Lady.
Today we are talking about Reactivity continued. I just finished up a 4-day boot camp, which is 4 days spent with reactive dogs touring this fine city that I live in. And I'm also on the very last week of Growl class, which is a group class for reactive dog, teaching dogs and handlers to move forward with harmony in neighborhoods. So we're talking about that today.
Did you have any of your Growl people in your boot camp?
Good question. No, but I did have previous board and trains. Were there any Growl people in there? I don't think so. I think it was mostly prior board and trains and then our two fine ladies from Alberta. Right now?
Okay.
Yeah. In both of these, there's a certain key to success, and I found out I love my boot camp so much, and I was very unhappy with how I was teaching Growl class. So I switched my Growl class, so I'm now teaching it more like boot camp, and I love the results that I'm now getting. And the success of boot camp is the very first thing that I focus on is removing the reactivity from the people. And I'm doing that by first starting with off-leash socials. So we're letting the dogs off-leash. Now, obviously, it's a lot more controlled than this. You don't just unclip a whole bunch of dogs that want to fight each other and let them go for it. It's actually a rather peaceful event. But by doing that, as everyone kind of sees what is possible and what their dog is capable of doing, and they realize that their dogs can get along with others, then the people feel safe with each other. And then once they feel safe with each other, they're ready to tackle the world together. So it just kind of brings... Well, it removes the people's reactivity because they're no longer worried about the dog that's next to them, walking beside them. So everyone has a buffer, like they have their own bodyguards within their group. And it makes such a huge difference when you can get the human reactivity out of there.
You create that just by letting the dogs off leash? What else are you doing? Like, clearly there's got to be more getting into people's heads than just letting their dogs off.
It is letting their dogs off leash, but it's as they're seeing their dogs all succeed. Then they don't have to worry about each other.
Okay.
So they're safe within their group, and then the reactivity is gone from the other dogs that they're next to as they're going forward. Am I explaining myself properly? No. From your silence, that's a clear no. That's good. That's okay.
I get what you're saying, but I understand what you're saying, but it sounds like it's basically just getting people used to their dogs being off leash and not having an issue. But I think there's more that you tell people or do with people to get them okay with that actual part of it. I know the first time I took a boot camp and you told me to let mine off leash, I was like, you had to send somebody over to take me by the arm to keep me from chasing her. So there are things that you do to get into people's heads.
There's rules attached to letting the dogs off leash so that people don't create an all-on 8x8 dog fight with all the dogs in the room. People must keep their forward movement. They must keep their eyes looking in the direction they want their dogs to go. They're not allowed to stare at their dogs and pretty much keep moving, which is much harder than one would think when you're worried about what your dog is going to do. And in this case, too, there was one lady that had really struggled with a bad event with her dog. And she was struggling with emotions attached to it. Because this stuff's really traumatic for all of us, especially if it's a younger dog. It can really get to you. Anyhow, she was really struggling. And bless her heart, when I told her she wasn't allowed to come in for the start because she was so reactive, she was quite willing and happy with that suggestion. So this was one scenario where we got her dog going first. And once dog was comfortable and everything was good, then we let her come in. Not let her, but there is more conversation than this.
Right.
But then she came in and then she was able to start her journey. But first we had to get her dog going forward without her because the two of them together had baggage, which I understand. Like some of this stuff is so traumatic.
Yep. Most definitely.
Yeah.
But then she got over, well, I'm not going to say over because that might be oversimplifying it, but
It's
she
day
was able to
one.
move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Day one is about all of the, and lesson one, in the case of ground class, is about everyone getting comfortable together, realizing their dogs are going to be okay together, and learning that they're all in the same place and that they're safe with each other. And once you have that, then it's kind of easy to start moving forward. The hardest part is the human reactivity because that will maintain any reactivity that's in the dogs.
Right.
So that's the first thing that has to be removed. Now, as I say removed, though, clearly it's not this easy. Like walking in a circle around my building, yeah, we got that, we can do that. Walking in a circle around my yard, yeah, now we can relax even more because the dogs are having fun outside. Then we're going to somewhere like the beach. Everyone can do that, but that still doesn't prepare them then for an incoming dog that's going to bombard the group. So
Right.
obviously working on human reactivity is either a 12-week goal or a 4-day goal, but I can remove probably 80% of it just at the beginning, and then it's going to take the remaining days and classes to be able to remove that other 20%. But it is the human reactivity that will maintain the behavior that's currently there.
Your people were quicker to learn than I was.
I'm just trying to think back.
It took me many years, not 12 weeks or 4 days.
You've never had 12 weeks. I actually think it took you 2 weeks in Port Alice.
Maybe.
I think that was when it happened for you. Boot camp for you was different. With Sizzle, I'm actually not thinking Sizzle, I'm thinking the other dog you brought one time. The dog wasn't yours, so that always adds a little bit of an emotional barrier there.
He was bred by me, but I didn't know him.
Yes.
He was not owned by me, so yeah.
And there was consequences depending on his performance, like heavy consequences. So
Yes.
there was a lot at stake, which of course will have anyone wound up tight. For you, I truly believe it was Port Alice when we just got to hang and let dogs be dogs. That's when it all clicked for you.
Huh?
That's because I was just going to totally insult you, but I won't do it online. I'll be nice.
I don't know why you'd start today.
I caught myself for once. You should celebrate these short moments as they happen. One of the things I was thinking about with boot camp is, and it's the questions I get asked by people, and it's questions about dog training today, which I am not a fan of and I'm quite outspoken about, as everyone's probably starting to notice. But at what point are we giving them cookies? And those types of questions. And I get it. Like, I totally understand about rewards or helping them. We've all learned about counter conditioning. And truthfully, I used to train that way. I don't so much anymore. And the reason being, with counter conditioning, your dog literally hits a glass ceiling where that cookie just isn't worth it anymore. Like, if that spider gets any closer to my face, I'm out of here. I don't care how many Smarties you give me. I'm out of here.
Right.
And dogs feel the same way with counter conditioning with another dog. So I've changed from that and I've gotten so much further ahead now. So now I am using rewards and punishments, but my rewards and punishments are more freedom and safety. Because a fearful dog or a dog who's struggling with reactivity, even coming from a place of fear, what they want is safety. And what their ultimate reward is freedom. And it sounds kind of glib just saying it like this. And it reminds me of back back when trainers saying, I give him a pet, that's his reward. Yeah, no, it's not, that's your reward. It's not like that. If a dog's struggling and he's scared of this oncoming dog, me asking him to look at me and giving him a cookie does not solve his problem or his emotional need in any way. If he's worried about that dog coming, I need to make him feel safe. And that safety is going to come in the form of me dealing with that dog for him in a confident, calm manner that shows him I won't let anything happen to him. Does this all make sense? If it's a young dog, it might be picking them up. And so many people say you should never pick up a dog, and I disagree with them. I would say when you pick them up, don't speak to them, because that's where we fail as poker players, and tell our dogs all about our fears and phobias in that moment once we start talking. But picking them up is a very good idea. It keeps them safe. It elevates them. It helps.
But in a situation where a dog is afraid of something that is not going to hurt them, like a garbage can,
Yeah.
would you pick them up at that point?
No, I'd probably go talk to the garbage can and stroke it and make sure I didn't look at my dog at all. Or I might laugh at them, like, dumbass, what are you doing? It depends on the dog. We had one in boot camp lose it. It was actually really funny. We were in a beautiful park and we came around a bend, so you couldn't quite see what was coming. And cut in the shrubbery was kind of this little alcove with this beautiful big fountain statue. One of the dogs lost their marbles, barking at it. And we all laughed at him. And he kind of recovered himself, tried to look cool, and waltzed off again. So, yes, if it's an inanimate object, I'm either going to show them what I want and how I want them to behave, or just laugh at them and make it light. So safety is one. That's the biggest thing that most of these dogs are seeking from us. When we're responding with cookies, it's just the wrong response. They're not wanting a snack in that moment in time. They're adrenalized. They're about to let their anal glands go and here, have a cookie, honey. What they're wanting is safety and protection and knowing that you understand what's happening to them. That helps them so much more. Then the other thing is freedom, is what I'm using as a punishment and reward. So they're going to get to the point they're on a retractable line, or they're on a long line, or even just me giving them leash and letting my shoulder drop. That's huge as a reward. And then likewise, consequence, you lose all that freedom if you want to misbehave. And I'm not talking for an hour, but the freedom's going to go.
Okay. One of the biggest points you've made recently that stuck with me that I had never really thought about, and maybe I brought this up on another podcast, but I'll say it again. I was always very quick to reward behavior in my dogs that I liked, regardless of whether it was just an expected behavior. Like if I walked by somebody with a dog and they didn't pull the leash, they'd get a reward for not pulling the leash. And you pointed out to me that you don't need to reward everything that's just an expected behavior. Like, behave, but you don't get a cookie for every time you behave the way you should.
And I think this piece is so hard for people to understand. Like, some dogs do need rewards, and I'm working with one lady, and this has been a really big, hard learning curve for her, because she's an amazingly diligent handler. So she's educated in what she's doing in dogs. She's spent that time learning and understanding and putting the hundreds of hours in. So when I was telling her to stop reinforcing, it was so hard for her to be able to understand what I was saying. And she really struggled wrapping her mind around it until she started seeing her dog change. But I think sometimes dogs are going to need it. Every dog's different.
Yeah.
But if we continue reinforcing, not lunging at a dog, or however you want to word it, that reinforcement is going to maintain the behavior of not lunging. Or, I'm using bad wording here because I'm talking in negatives and things like that. But the reward alone is going to maintain your reactivity to a certain point. And I have found this with a lot of my better clients. So I want to think my agility people, like the people that really understand reinforcement, that have gotten really good at it, and they're good handlers, they know their dogs, and they're willing to put the 10,000 repetitions in. A lot of those people get to a point that their rewards are actually maintaining the behavior. And if they would just stop rewarding the dog and now just expect it, the behavior would go away. And I love working with these people because I look like the best dog trainer in the world. Like the dog sees a dog, it stares at it, it looks at them, and then keeps looking at them, so they reward it for this focus on them. And then the next dog comes and it looks at the dog, and I tell them, do not feed him. Do not feed him. Don't even put your hand near your pocket. Keep walking. Look where you want your dog to go. And they're like, but I have to. He's being so good. As the dog's like staring at them intently, just tell him to get going. And 2 or 3 of those, and that dog will start looking totally normal going past the next dogs. He'll stop looking at them, kind of alerting and then looking for his cookie.
Well, I think they also learn that the cookie comes because they just hard stared that dog right before they looked at the owner.
It doesn't take them long, not the clever ones, to work that out. But even, I'm using that as an example, but some of my handlers are better than that. So they see a dog and they're making it happen before the dog even hard stares. But it's still maintaining that behavior. It's not until you can get rid of the food and look like a normal person at the dog park. And the dog park's a terrible thing to say because we all hate the dog park. But if you start going to a dog park and looking at handlers, you'll know what their dog is like before you even see their dog. And we had a fantastic moment of that this boot camp, as I pick on this poor man. It was a stranger walking towards us with his, we'll leave breed out of it so we don't identify this poor man. But it's a big dog, probably 90 pounds. I could see he has it on a flexi leash, and he's holding the dog tight up against the fence as he walks through towards us on a pathway. He's walking downhill on very dry gravel. So dry gravel, if you have someone pulling you, is very slippery. You don't have good grip. And I noticed to see he had a knee brace on one knee. So I'm in my head, I'm just doing the math here quick. Knee brace, he's going downhill. Dog is big. Dog looks like a future client. That was very politically correct of me right there. And the dog I had at the time, I had a flexi leash on him, and I put my hand lower to my dog on the nylon strap before the flexi leash part. And I had the flexi leash in my hand like a weapon. So if that dog got him off, I could bop it in the nose with the flexi. And dog hadn't done anything per se. It was the way the guy was moving down the pathway as he held the dog against the fence. It was his body language that told me, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And in that scenario with me, it wasn't an issue at all. Our dogs were super. He kind of strangled his dog and got it past on 2 legs. All right, whatever. Do what you need to do. But he came across my other people in boot camp and didn't have such great success in handling his dog. So I read him right. Your body language needs to look like the perfect person that has that perfectly behaved doodle, not like the person that's terrified of what their Rottweiler or German Shepherd is about to do.
Right.
I can't even remember what I started talking about there. It was a very long-winded story. Sorry.
It was about rewarding behaviors that should just be expected.
Right. A lot of reactivity is about changing your own handling, removing your own reactivity, and then changing your handling so you look like a normal person. But all the while doing that, also not letting your dog misbehave and target and hard stare. It's pretty much it summed up, isn't it? And when they're good, you give them more leash. When they're not good, you shorten it. Or when they're telling you they're about to not be good, you shorten it. And if they look scared, you protect them. That's pretty much 4 days of boot camp and growl class summed up right there. That's reactivity.
Huh.
It's so simple when it's said like that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Is your drink good
Sounds
there,
good.
Jill?
It's a pear bubbly.
Oh,
Summertime.
it's the vodka.
No.
On boot camp, we have 4 days, so it's wonderful. We get to go to all these different places, different scenarios. We get to practice moving past dogs on leash, moving past if an off-leash dog comes in their dog's face. So there's so many different opportunities to work on different skills with each other, and then eventually alone, because alone is the end goal. But in all of this, just because we're traveling around, for 2 of my students, they lived in very challenging neighborhoods where there's so much traffic. Tiny sidewalks, tons of traffic, kind of dog hell, really, is what it is. So we went to their neighborhoods. It was very fun. And my one client, she's so good with her dog in most scenarios. But I put her on home turf, and it was so funny watching the train derail. I could barely keep her on the sidewalk. She was like darting into driveways. She would rather get hit by a car than stay on the sidewalk. It was so funny. But her level of reactivity that came in, oh goodness, she just had me giggling. She wasn't so much giggling. I did it all on her behalf. But I was able to point out to her how all of her reactivity was still 100% in her home neighborhood. So she'd mastered it pretty much everywhere else, but home turf, it was still at 100%. And she was wondering why her dog was still a tiger in her home neighborhood. And it didn't take us long to find out. It was so funny.
It was all her.
It was all her. All her in a very challenging situation. So the situation added just enough stress to her that she defaulted to her old habits. But it was fascinating watching it, and I believe it was also very good learning for her when she kind of realized what was happening and taking place. And going back to her, it was actually, I love this woman, she's fantastic. People say that corrections don't work, so we were walking along, and this wasn't on her home territory. We're on a off-leash dog park, which can make most people terrified. So I think she had a dog come towards her, nothing terrible, but it was just enough for her to make her tighten up her arm and yank her dog in, just in case he decided to kill it, which of course he had no intention of doing, but her response almost triggered it in him. Anyhow, I had spoken to her previously about her doing this, but there just wasn't the awareness there. Maybe there was the awareness, but the habit was so entrenched that she couldn't stop it in that moment. So this is now on day 3. So we'd had lots of practice up until this point with her not pulling him in. And she got better at that, but then her arm would stay stationary as it was supposed to be, but the wrist would come in. Anyhow, all it took was one slap to her wrist when she did it, and she had this absolute look of horror on her face as I slapped her. Then she burst out laughing, and then she never did it again. So corrections work, people. When they're not done all the time, when it's a one-time event, because trust me, I don't slap this lady off, and I think this is the one and only ever time. They work. They have impact, and she never did it again. So corrections work.
Perfectly timed.
About the dogs.
Perfectly timed corrections work over and over and over.
They really do. And they work fast. They work very, very fast in understanding it. I think it's the shock value. Like for her, it was so funny. So back to that. We always say that we're balanced trainers, right? And we're talking about it shouldn't all be corrections. We should be using rewards and training should be fun, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. And in my 4-day boot camp, there was only one dog that got corrected. And what he got corrected for was loose leash because his owner kept letting him pull. So it was kind of unfair to the dog, but once he's allowed to pull, he goes a bit crazy in the head. He starts getting frantic and worrying about stuff, and then then it all goes downhill from there. So he got loose leash corrections. That was it. Out of all of the other dogs there, not a single dog was corrected in 4 days worth of training. And that's what balanced should be. Now, if we needed to, we would have, but we just went slow enough and gradually escalated the places we were going to in the right way that it just never needed to happen. The dogs understood expectations, people understood expectations. That's what it's supposed to be about. I think for balanced trainers, when people hear they're going to that, everyone's imagining like dogs getting zapped and corrections all the time. Yeah. That's not what it is. It shouldn't be that. So for these, I'm going to say for Growl and this, it's been more about teaching the humans the handling that they need to be doing than it has been about training the dogs. It's been both. Obviously, it's been both.
Yeah.
But Bootcamp in particular is a huge part on teaching the humans to catch up to where their dog is.
Yeah, agreed. I definitely learned that part of it. And I went in thinking it was all my dog that needed to be taught. Came away realizing that was not the case.
And as I say about loose leash too, I have a very strong belief that until a dog has the confidence to move forward in this world and wanting to drag you, they shouldn't be taught loose leash. So with a young puppy or with a rescue or a broken dog that I'm working with, until they are able to drag me down the street, I am not teaching them loose leash. Because first they have to have gas in the tank to be able to take me before I can start applying the brake. If I never put gas in the tank, that dog is never going to have the confidence it needs to live in this world.
Yeah.
So there was one dog in boot camp that we never worked on loose leash once. We wanted her to pull, to get out ahead of her mum and pull, because she was quite happy walking behind mummy. And then as we graduated, as the weekend kept going, we put this dog on a long line and then on a flexi leash so that she could go out ahead. And we never did once address loose leash pulling with this dog. Now, down the road, it may need to happen once this dog gets a lot more confidence, but it didn't happen in the 4 days she was here. So I am a big advocate for loose leash, and that's always the first thing I teach dogs. But you can never treat all dogs the same. You have to adjust stuff for every single dog. And in this one scenario, this dog did not need that and never got taught it.
Yeah. And some of them arrive needing it at 7 weeks of age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's 7 weeks of age, but I get your point. Yes.
Yeah.
Some dogs need it very fast.
Yeah. It was interesting when you said when this dog pulled, he would get frantic.
Yeah.
And I have struggled with loose leash walking with Sizzle her entire life. She does it with you. She won't do it with me. She does it with other friends of mine, not with me. But if she does loose leash walk with me and then get up to the point where she can feel pressure on the collar,
yeah,
the minute she feels that pressure, she goes into total weight pull mode. So she doesn't get frantic, but as soon as there's any bit of pull pressure, she wants to pull even more and more.
Which is what this dog does with his dad. It's exactly that. So he kind of tests it, finds a little bit of a loophole, and goes with 100% commitment to dragging with all that he can. Then once he succeeds at that, that's when I then see all the stress come. He then has forward momentum. Then he starts spinning. It's like pulling forward and then spinning, pull, spin, pull, spin. And then before you know it, it's pull, lunge. That's just this dog's pattern. So for this dog, if you stop the pull, you stop the spin, then you stop the frantic, then you stop the inevitable lunge. It's
right.
The final thing to come. So we never worked on this dog not biting. We just worked on don't pull. Because if he doesn't pull, he doesn't want to bite.
And he also can't get into the situation where he can.
Exactly.
Because if he can't pull, he can't get there. Yeah, it's all a step-by-step thing. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else to add, Miss Jilly?
I don't think so, other than everybody that has any issues with their dogs should do a boot camp.
I love boot camp. There
It's a
was one
lot.
dog there too. He was a younger dog with no issues. He's such a wonderful young man. And he was there just to keep him on the straight and narrow. He was 8 months, 9 months. No issues. Perfect little dog. But just so that he can stay perfect.
Well, and a good way to get out and do proper socializing
Yeah, exactly.
and everything without dropping them.
Appropriate socializing.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. We got to go to a wonderful restaurant and have 8 dogs on the patio.
Oh dear.
For our poor waitress.
I hope your waitress was a dog lover.
I do too.
I hope you left her a good tip.
But that was fun though, and that's a good life skill. And I think that puts the sociable part back into reactive dog owners' lives, because having a reactive dog, especially if you're single, can be very lonely.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, all you've got is your dog and you can't even take your dog anywhere.
Yeah, and then you don't exactly want to leave them alone if you've worked all day and just get home. So you start not going out with your friends as much.
Yep.
Yeah, things can get quite small. Yeah, it was a wonderful 4 days, and I've also absolutely loved my growl class too. I'll be sad to see them all go. Sad, but in a good way too.
Now, when are you doing your next boot camp? And are your growl dogs coming to it?
Nothing now for this school year, so I'm back in September, and probably not until the spring again. Be a while.
Okay.
Instead, I'm going to do a heel work camp, and you're going to help me, Jill.
Are you?
Yes.
When did you decide that?
Talking with Matthew this morning, and it's kind of been coming up in my mind because there's a need for it locally right now. There's need for it locally, but there's only so many evenings I can teach. And I don't want to give up more evening hours because that means Harry gets robbed. So I'd rather give up 2 days on a weekend.
Oh, so I get to work with the dogs that are lagging?
We get to write up our syllabus in Port Alice. I've been thinking about it a lot already. These dogs are leaving with killer left turns.
All right.
And killer figure eights on the inside post.
Yes. I'd love to see that. High stepping
seeing...
leg crossing.
With rear end coming in. Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, that's my next big goal, but that's a whole different topic. And then after that, Matthew has said he will come. I'll do my heel work clinic, get everyone started, and then we'll book Matthew. Well, we'll book Matthew now, but he will be coming after that.
Cool.
Yeah. Plans, man.
Big plans.
All right, I will let you go because I have to go and get my darling board and trains out.
All right. I have to go back to work because my boss is kind of, I don't know.
You actually work, Jill? I thought you just got paid.
From today forward, I do. Take that, boss lady.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. See you next Tuesday. Bye.